Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel, and today we are going to talk about intention revealing names in programming. So have you ever spent like 15 minutes just to understand what a function or variable does in your code? Well, I have done that and I'm not proud of it. I've spent like 15 to 20 minutes sometimes just to understand what it does. So let's look into this problem now. So please note that guys that the idea of this video directly comes from a book called Clean Code, written by Robert C. Martin, or we also know him as Uncle Bob. I would heavily recommend everyone to read this book. This is not a visual representation of the book or its topic. I'm just trying to explain it, the one particular topic in more details. And there is one thing to note as well, that this video is based on just a one topic from one chapter. So this book has a lot of information and everyone should read it. So let's understand the topic that we are trying to tackle right now. Let's see what are non-intentional revealing names and what are intentional revealing names and how we can write these names. So why do we use non-intentional revealing names in programming at the first place? So let's look into the cause now. So when you're coding a feature in your project or debugging something, you are focused on functionality of the code. You don't care about the aesthetic. You just want to make it work, right? And which is completely reasonable. That's how everyone should and everyone does their programming. This leads to names that do not reveal the true intention of the variable or function or the class. The intention usually gets changed during the development, which is why this happens. This becomes a problem if a programmer doesn't refactor his code after making the change. Just because the writer of the code did not spend like 5 minutes to refactor the code and give it a proper names, the next person who will be debugging the code or just reading it to create a new feature, you will have to spend like 10 to 15 minutes just to understand what this function does or what this class does in the whole system. And which leads to the memes like this. We have seen these memes a lot in our social media, but yeah, we can say that not refactoring causes these memes. We have to understand that using better and intention revealing names is an investment. You are investing 5 minutes right now so that you don't have to spend 15 minutes to understand the code in the future. Please remember that your code is not static. Over time, the requirements from stakeholders will change. You might find some kind of bug that you will try to fix it, which requires some change in your code base. And because of these reasons, your code will evolve constantly. As a programmer, it's our job to make sure that the names of classes, functions, and variables shows the true intention over the period when this changes happens in your code base. That's our job. So let's look into some steps on how we can name such intention revealing names. Finding a name which reveals a true intention of your code base, it's really simple. You just have to ask these three questions to your name. If it can answer all these three questions, then it's a good name that you can use and it won't create any confusion in the future. So the three questions are: why does it exist in your program? What does it do in your program? And how is it being used in your program? If your name can answer these three questions at any line of code, then that's a good name and that won't create any confusion. So let's look at an example. If we go back to our old code, we can always find some kind of example like this where we used just a t for storing date, right? Which made sense when we were coding something, just trying to figure out the problem. If you try to ask those three questions to this square variable name, you won't get any answers. So here are some better alternatives for that variable. Elapsed time in days, days since creation, days since modification, file age in days. So if you look at these names, you can answer all those three questions. You know how it's gonna be used in your code. You can have an idea what kind of value it's gonna store and why it does exist in your code base. But sometime when we talk about such alternative names, some developers raise a question that using such a long names will decrease my productivity because I have to type more, which is a completely lame excuse in my opinion. Because in today's age, almost all the IDEs supports auto completion, right? Like auto completion will most of the time suggest you the name that is most appropriate for that context, and that's where you don't really need to type the whole name. You just only type 2 to 3 letters and it will suggest you the name. You just have to press enter. So let's not give that excuse, and let's try using such a descriptive names in our code base. Now I want to do like a case study on my code base that I wrote like 2 years ago and how I changed it during the rewrite of the project. And let's look into that now. So here's the application that I wrote about 2 years ago called expense tracker app. And that is this statement.js file, which is basically a function that returns a statements. It basically gets all the expenses for the user, all the incomes for the user. It tries to combine it, performs a logic, and then it returns the statements that my client can use. So you don't have to worry about all of the code. Let's just look at the variable names that I used here, month and year. So let's try to answer 3 questions for these bad names that I used 2 years ago. Why does it exist in the program? Well, the variable names gives you an idea what kind of value it's gonna store, but we don't really know why it exists in the program. Second one, what does it do in the program? Well, it stores some kind of month and year value, but we don't know what it does in the program. The third one, how is it being used in the program? Well, we can't answer that question either. So currently I'm rewriting this old project using Nest.js framework. I'm trying to learn this framework, which is why I chose to rewrite the old project. In while I'm writing this project in Nest.js, I realized the mistake I made about 2 years ago, and I came up with like these two names, which, in my opinion, answers all these 3 questions. So the first question: why does it exist in the program? It performs some kind of logic to get an index, which will be provided to a query. We can answer that question just from the name because it says query month index. So query month, it says like some kind of um, we are going to perform some kind of query which requires a month, and we are trying to get the index of that month. What does it do in the program? Well, holds some kind of index value which is going to be performed or used in a query, right? A database query, it can be a just an array query. And how is it being used in the program? As we mentioned, that it just helps out the query function to filter the data for the month or year. I know the answer of these 3 questions can overlap each other, but the main idea is if you're reading the name, it should give you an idea what it does in the program, why you even storing that value or why you chose that name, and it should give you some kind of an idea how it's going to be used. Right now we can say that it's going to be used in the query, and it's going to store an index of the month. That gives you enough information you need for this variable. That's which is why we can say that this is a good name, and it's not going to confuse someone who is reading this code after like a year or something. Again, I want to remind everyone that using a good variable names is an investment for the future. And let's conclude this video by saying that use a names that reveal the true intention of the code. If your names can answer those big 3 questions, that's a pretty good name and you won't get confused in the future. Spending 5 minutes right now is an investment for future, so that you don't have to spend 10 minutes to understand your own code. And everyone should read the Clean Code book by Robert C. Martin. It has really good topics, really good things about writing a clean code, which can help you maintain it over time. And here's some references that I use for this video that you can find out. I'm going to link this PPT in the description. You guys can download it and look into it. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. If you love what I did in this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want me to keep making these videos based on the clean code concept, make sure that you leave a comment, and I will see you soon.